Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around Australia. We've got people from all over the place today. Welcome to this webinar from ESS BIZGRANTS. We're going to look at some of the grants that are available for small, medium enterprises that you might think about making applications on behalf of your clients. If you have any questions during the webinar, would you mind just typing your question into your computer and raise your hand, and later on during the webinar I will answer the questions to the best of my ability, bearing in mind that some of these grants get a little bit complicated based on the government's legislation. So the first grant we're going to look at today is the Industry Skills Fund. This is a new grant that started in February, and its purpose is to assist businesses ranging from micro businesses, as you can see there, 0 to 4 full-time equivalent employees, up to businesses with over 200 full-time equivalent employees. The business needs to identify a legitimate skill development program for their team members to undertake and be able to identify that this skills training will assist the business in developing new and improved business opportunities. So the grant that's available for a micro business is 75%. There is no specific amount mentioned in this grant literature as to how much is available. The business has to obtain a quotation for the work that they believe that they need undertaken and submit it to the Industry Skills Fund. Now, there are Industry Skills Fund case managers that have been deployed across Australia in the capital cities, obviously, and the major regional areas, who can have a free, no obligation meeting with your clients to determine the type of grants for skills development that would be suitable for that particular business. I've had some dealings with these skills development officers. They know their stuff, and they are very helpful in identifying grants in the program that could be of benefit to individual businesses. Small businesses up to 19 full-time equivalents receive 66%. And then I need to comment on grants if your clients are situated in Northern Australia. Northern Australia is defined as the area north of the Tropic of Capricorn, which is basically the city of Rockhampton North in Queensland. And obviously that Tropic of Capricorn runs across Australia, Northern Territory, and Western Australia. The funding for the businesses in Northern Australia is coming from the federal government's Special Development Fund for Northern Australia, in which $5 billion has been allocated for expenditure over the next couple of years. So if your client is situated in Northern Australia, they can receive a 75% grant towards the skills development. Medium enterprises from 20 to 199 full-time equivalents. In most of Australia, the grant is 50%, but again, if your clients are in Northern Australia, it's 75%. And for businesses situated in the rest of it, or the main parts of Australia, with 200 more employees, the grant is 25% or 50% if they are located in Northern Australia. Now, when this grant was first released, the government indicated the applicants had to be companies or corporate trustees acting for trusts. In September, that was changed to basically apply to any type of business, so long as it is solvent and been in operations for 3 years. That's probably an indication that the uptake of this grant was not proceeding fast enough for the government's liking. So if you have clients, and I'm sure you do, who could benefit from having some skills development amongst their team members, this is a great grant to bring to their notice for them to look at applying for. The next one we're going to look at is the Business Growth Grant. Now, this is a major grant initiative from the federal government. The minimum turnover for the area north of the Tropic of Capricorn, the Northern Australia area again, is 750,000. But in the rest of Australia, the main parts of Australia, main population parts, it's $1.5 million. And the applicant has to be a company. So there's grants of up to 20,000 on a 50% basis. And the money can be basically spent on any type of activity that the Business Growth Grant case manager approves that will enhance the business's performance. So from an accountant's point of view, this could cover budgets, cash flow forecasts, strategic plans, business plans, debtors management improvement, management team training, some lean management work. Now, they're all activities that I've undertaken as an accountant for that grant. And there may be some other areas that accountants could also do. So there's some tremendous opportunities for you to earn some fees out of undertaking this type of work. And obviously your client can also enlist all sorts of other advisors, from workplace health and safety to lean management consultants to factory layout experts to people developing new computer software for that particular client's business. A whole range of opportunities, as long as it's perceived that this activity is going to improve the client's business. Now, the federal government has this concept of priority industries, and the eligible businesses here are the priority industries: advanced manufacturing, food and agribusiness, medical technologies and pharmaceuticals, mining equipment, and oil, gas, and energy. And enabling technologies which assist any of those 5 previous categories: freight and logistics, infrastructure-related construction, information and communication technology, and professional services in the scientific area. Now, you might say that's only 9 industry groups. Well, those 9 industry groups have got over 550 different types of Australian Taxation Office business numbers when you go through and determine the numbers that could be apply to this particular grant offering. So it is quite large. In fact, you could probably argue that virtually every type of trade could get a Guernsey under this grant program. So please think about it and have a good look at it, because it's got some significant benefits for a lot of your clients who you will find are eligible for this grant. The next one I want to bring to your attention today in this sweep through grants available for small, medium enterprises is accelerating commercialisation. Now, this is the largest grant that the federal government currently has on offer for small, medium enterprises. The eligibility criteria here is companies and corporate trustees of a trust. The turnover must be under $20 million for each of the last 3 years, but it could be 0. So startups can apply, and the businesses need to have developed a new product, process, or service. And the grants can be up to $1 million on a 50% basis. Grants would normally start at about 50,000, so that means the project's 100,000. The government's expectation when this grant was launched was that the average grant payment would be around $240,000, but there's been quite a number go through at $1 million. So there's plenty of large grants being handed out. Now, again, this grant is targeted at those same priority industries that I just mentioned before, so I'll just bring them back up. so that you're aware of them again, and the enabling technologies. Incidentally, one of the interesting things on these enabling technology businesses is that they don't have to actually be supplying services to those 5 main priority industries. They could be proposing to make services available to them. So it's a distinction in words, and that might help you in arguing your case. I think it's a great grant, this one, and it's one that accountants should be looking at very closely. The other conditions is the applicant must own or have the beneficial use of intellectual property. Now, I don't think you'd get beneficial use of intellectual property for the Sydney market, for argument's sake. It needs to be Australia or a fair part of Australia to have the beneficial use of intellectual property. And there is this concept of first commercial sale. So the funding is made available until your client makes their first commercial sale. Now, the key words there are first sale and commercial. Commercial is at the expected selling price that's been specified in the marketing documentation, and the government accepts that it is a reasonable price. So I had a situation last year where a client had an independent marketing report prepared, and that expert believed that the selling price would be about $13,500 plus GST. The company was short of money. Incidentally, a lot of these companies that end up with this grant are a little bit short of money at various times, and did a deal on a final sort of prototype product that they developed with a number of the prospective customers to field test it, and they agreed to pay about $4,500 each for these test prototypes. Entrepreneur program accepted that that was reasonable and that it was not a first commercial sale. So it's just something to bear in mind. There is a fairly extensive merit criteria that your client has to go through. After all, they're applying for up to $1 million. You would expect the government to have some real safeguards about handing this money out as a grant to a business. It is not a loan, it's a grant, and the program has 6 key criteria. The need for funding. So if your client's got $10 million in the bank account, they'd want to have a good reason prepared as to why it's unreasonable for them to spend their own money rather than seek a government grant. There has to be a market opportunity, and that needs to have been identified. And this is prior to the detailed work having been done. So the client's expected to have done their homework and preferably have some independent substantiation on some of these items, particularly market opportunity. Value proposition. And this really goes in tandem with the market opportunity. If the market opportunity is identified that there is a good opportunity to be able to sell this product at, say, $13,500, you won't get your proposal accepted if the client's talking about selling it for $50,000, because they won't be able to satisfy the value proposition. Execution plan. How is your client going to go about bringing this product to market? The entrepreneur program, and in particular their case manager, will be very keen to understand that your client understands how this product can be effectively commercialized. In some instances, it will be obvious that the inventor or developer of a product or service is not really capable of doing this, and therefore in the grant application you possibly should be looking to include funding for an independent expert to act as the CEO of the business. And the government will include funding for that type of person up to $250,000 per annum for 2 years in the overall $1 million limit, if you believe it's appropriate to apply for it. But that can help your client answer the execution plan. Questions? Management capability flows on really from the execution plan. Who has got the management capability of nurturing this business from the post-research and development phase into a full commercial product? That person's got to be able to communicate with potential distributors and major customer groups. He's got to be able to instruct solicitors on drafting of appropriate agreements. Got to be able to finalise the protection of the intellectual property through patents, etc. And he's got to be able to ensure that the product is going to be able to be produced. That might entail the construction of a factory or entering into appropriate arrangements with a manufacturer who will manufacture the product for the business. There's a lot of questions when it comes to management. And what are the national benefits? What's in it for Australia? And what are the benefits for other businesses in Australia? Now, part of the national benefits could be training of the team and a whole new range of technologies. Or it could be that the business is going to have to utilise significant numbers of other Australian businesses in the project. But it needs to be thought about before the application is made. But this is a great grant, up to $1 million, and grants have been approved on an ongoing basis. And there's an announcement about every 6 weeks from Oz Industry on behalf of the Entrepreneurs Program as to the grants that have been issued. Incidentally, work for accountants. There's work for accountants under this grant. Most of these businesses are going to need business plans, budgets, cash flow forecasts, calculation of amounts of shares to be issued for certain amounts of money, because many of these applicants are going to require to raise capital to fund their 50% share of the overall cost of the commercialisation phase. And for many of them, they will also need assistance in the project management, in the record keeping, because the way accelerating commercialisation works is that there is a fairly complicated budget program that is supplied to an applicant by Entrepreneurs Program, and this will require a report being submitted every 3 months, because that's how the government fund you. So they do give your client cash in advance based on the budget forecast that's been submitted in the application, and that actual expenditure has to then be submitted to the case manager every 3 months, and it's based on what that expenditure report says, together with the other information that's contained in the reports, as to the quantum of money that's going to be made available in the next tranche of grant funding. So it's an interesting grant, and one that some accountants around Australia are actively participating in. Research and development. It's available for companies and corporate trustees of trusts. The real benefit is for turnover under $20 million. 45% of the research and development expenses are claimable as research and development. For turnover over $20 million, it's 40% of the research and development expenses. But if the turnover is under 20 million and the company is trading at a loss, the company can claim a cash payment of 45% of the research and development expenditure. So this is a great assistance for startups who are plowing a lot of money into research and development. And for that reason, they probably are hounding you to have their tax returns done as soon as possible after the 30th of June. Because under the Taxation Office agreement on research and development, the tax office will pay into their bank account that 45% of the eligible research and development expenditure within 30 days of the tax return being lodged. Just something to bear in mind on research and development. The research must be for new knowledge that's not currently readily available. So clients need to be identifying what research they have done into what is already out there in the marketplace on a particular subject that they're looking at undertaking a research project for. The only other requirement is that on an annual basis, the business has to register with Oz Industry every year. Some people get a little bit confused about this. They think that once a project is registered, especially if it's going over more than one financial year, they don't have to register again the next year. You do have to register, and you have to register 10 months after the end of the financial year, which obviously for 30th of June is the 30th of April the following year, or the date of lodgement of the tax return, whichever is the earlier. There's a lot of businesses claiming research and development, but I also know there's a lot of businesses miss out for a number of reasons. Some people claim they don't know about research and development, but some people who do know about it seem to undertake the research and development in the wrong entity. They need to be in a company or a corporate trustee for a trust. Apprenticeship incentives. The previous Prime Minister, Mr. Abbott, had announced about 18 months ago that there was going to be some significant changes made to apprenticeships incentives, but they don't seem to have come to fruition at this stage. So it's worth having a look at for clients who are contemplating employing apprentices. The government has a document called the National Skills Needs List that, whilst it's updated every 12 months, it's basically been the same for the last 5 years. And it lists the skills that the government is offering incentives for. There are 131 work classifications on that list. So it does cover a wide range of activities, and basically every major trade is included in it. So there's apprenticeship incentives for new workers, for Australian school-based apprentices, for mature-aged workers. There's special incentives for apprentices working in drought-declared areas. There's benefits for apprentices with disabilities. And there's adult apprentices over 25 years. So the mature age worker is someone over 45 years of age who you're going to, or your client's going to offer an apprenticeship to. And there's also adult apprentices aged over 25. So there's a wide range of apprenticeship categories that you can see on the screen, and there are incentive payments for the employer for each of those. There's also some benefits payable to the individual apprentices, but we haven't summarised them in this particular product, ESS BIZGRANTS. Restart wage subsidy. This is for employees aged over 50 years who have been unemployed for more than 6 months, who have been receiving support payments from the federal government. And there is a subsidy of up to $10,000 over a 2-year period available to an employer who engages someone in this category, and the person continues to work for them for a 2-year period. So this could be very beneficial for some of your clients who are considering employing people who have been unemployed for 6 months and who are aged over 50 years. The next one is the Industry Capability Network. This is a free site to register projects and workabilities. There's no actual grant money received, but it's a great network to encourage your clients to register a particular skill that they have or products that they've developed or work capabilities that they have, so that they can be brought to the attention of major developers. Now, this is a program that's coordinated by the federal government and each of the state governments in Australia and the New Zealand government. And its purpose is to identify major projects and for the officers of the Industry Capability Network to make representations to organisations that are proposing to undertake major projects, to advise them of the skills that are available in Australia or New Zealand for particular components of those projects. Now, your client won't be considered in this type of program unless they have registered. Registration is free. However, you can pay for an advertisement if your client wishes to do that, but they don't have to. And they've then got a chance of being included in a review that a major project management team is undertaking of reviewing what the skills are within Australia for a particular project. So it's worth looking at. Trade Start. If you've got clients who are contemplating starting to export, this is a free service that Austrade operate, that your client can contact Austrade and they will send or refer you to a Trade Start officer who can give your client some preliminary advice on strategies to adopt in looking at exports. TradeX. A lot of people forget about this. This is a benefit for importers who are importing a product which they are going to then export within 12 months. In lots of cases, it will be part of another product, and so it's a product has been brought into Australia and has been added to something else, and it's now been exported. Your client can gain a cash flow advantage by gaining an exemption from customs duties and GST on those purchases, subject to the product being exported within 12 months. The Farm Management Deposit Scheme, probably not a grant, but it's one of these benefits that are available. This is obviously for primary producers who can set aside money in profitable years and draw down in low income years. I assume those of you who are handling primary producers know all about this. Medical relocation grants are available in certain categories for general practitioners to relocate to outer metropolitan areas. The grant available is up to $40,000. There's a GP's registrar's relocation incentive of up to $30,000. And there's incentives for specialists to relocate out of cities, downtown areas, the so-called specialist areas, into outer metropolitan areas and regional areas, a grant of up to $40,000. So it's worth bearing that in mind if you're acting for medical practitioners. The Export Market Development Grant, we talked about export just a moment ago relative to the TradeX scheme. It's worth visiting the Export Marketing Development Grant. It's available for a client if they're exporting or proposing to export. Turnover has to be under $50 million. The applicant can be any type of entity. And if they've incurred export development expenditure over $15,000 in a 12-month period, they can lodge a claim. The first claim year can in fact be a 2-year period, so that you can have the combined expenditure over the 2-year period to claim the grant. The grants are 50% of eligible expenditure. There are 13 major categories of expenditure, some of which have sub-category limits to what can be claimed. So 50% of that net amount is the maximum grant application, and the maximum grant in monetary terms is $150,000. Now this grant gets paid out. $40,000 is paid very soon after the application is lodged, and the balance, if the claim is over $40,000, is determined in this current fiscal year around May 2016, and is then paid out, because there is a specific quantum of money that's available for the Export Market Development Grant, and in some years there has to be some pro rata allocating to determine the amount of the individual grants. Grant applications have closed for the 2014-15 year. They closed at the 30th of November, unless you have a client who is utilising a registered grant consultant for the Export Market Development Program. And if so, those persons have until the end of February 2016 to lodge the 2015 grant applications. Now I'm just going to check and see if there's any questions. I've got no questions, but if you think of any questions, please contact me. Now I'd like now to give you a look at the ESS BizGrants website, so that we're on the members home area at this stage, and I'm just going to show you a profile. And I started the process one earlier before we started this webinar, because it does take a few minutes just to put the data in. So I call this company New Enterprises Proprietary Limited. You need to identify the entity that this grant relates to, or this business relates to, sorry. And obviously we're choosing a company here. You need to say whether they're an exporter, do they do imports, number of employees. We have bands of employees, and this business has got 18 employees. So they've ticked the 20 to 200 band. Do you have an ABN? Yes. The years operating, there's some bands there. We've said over 3 years. They've been operating for about 10 years. The turnover bands, this business has got a turnover of about $6 million. So it's in the band $1.5 million to $20 million. Are they registered for GST? Yes. Are they tax exempt? No. Are they doing some research and development? Yes. Now that research and development question is nothing to do with whether they're a company or whether they spend more than $20,000. It's a general question, because to apply for some of those other grants, particularly accelerating commercialization, most businesses have been doing research and development. Some of them might be in a situation where they can't claim the rebate because they're not incorporated as a company, but it's generally a question to steer us as to whether they're doing some activities that might be eligible for a grant. So we click save there. I've already introduced the address, and we said this was a business in Wollongong, New South Wales. I entered the postcode, and that then enabled the ESS BizGrants to identify that Wollongong's in a major city of Australia. It's generally part of the Sydney metropolitan area. The next thing we had to do, this business is a construction business in commercial buildings, hotels, all sorts of project management. So I'd already gone through and entered that and identified that that's what our company was doing. If you know your code, you can enter the code, and then all you've got to do is search grants. Now, the system is showing that there are 16 potential grants, And we'll just show you what they are. We're not going to go through all of these. We haven't got time in this webinar. So accelerating commercialisation has come up. Now, it's primarily come up because this business is in one of those eligible priority industries. It's a construction business. And also because we said that the business was undertaking research and development. There's two of those apprenticeship incentives that have come up. There's an Australian Bureau of Statistics, which is free information that about 10 years ago used to get sold and by the Bureau of Statistics at about $8,000. So businesses can obtain that information for free at present. There's some New South Wales government grants coming into this one, bin trim rebates. There's that business growth grant that we talked about before, and this is because it's infrastructure related construction. There's Defence Industry Change Plant Grant, Export Market, the Industry Capability, the Industry Skills Fund, the R&D. There's a New South Wales government program called Regional Industries Investment. Research Connections, I didn't mention before, but there's up to $50,000 available to assist in research activities. The Restart Wage Subsidy, Training for Employment Scholarships, WorkCover New South Wales have got a small business rebate. So you can see there's a fair number of grants there or incentives. Doesn't mean your client's going to be eligible for them all. It doesn't mean that you necessarily want to have your client apply for them all. So let's just have a look at one so you can see how this system works. We'll go to accelerating commercialisation. In the first instance, you will receive a summary of what the grant's about. You can look at the funding, as we got from 5,000 to 1 million. If you would like to have a look at the paper, which is part of the toolkit, you can click on, and we've got a problem with that one. We normally get the paper, but obviously we've got a technical error there. So we'll have to get that fixed, but we then have some additional criteria. Have you developed a new product, process or service? We say yes. If the applicant is not a company, will they agree to form a company? I didn't mention that before. When you lodge an application for accelerating commercialisation, it can be made in any type of entity's name. But the rules are that if an individual or a partnership or someone that's not a company is offered a grant, they have to incorporate a company before they'll receive the grant. So we'll say yes. Does the applicant have the ability to fund 50% of the project over the 2 years? The applicant doesn't need to have the money on the day the application is lodged, but they need to have a summary as to where that money is going to come from. Now, it could come from capital raising from business angels, or from sales of other products, and they require an accountant's certificate on that. And if you were their accountant, you could review what they're proposing and sign the certificate for them, so that the government knows that someone who has some knowledge of these things has reviewed what the client is saying. Can the applicant justify that funding is required? Someone going in, obviously looking for $1 million, needs to be able to justify that this project that's going to cost $2 million is worthwhile. And does the applicant have the ownership of the intellectual property? So we say yes. So we've answered yes to all those. What the system's done now is bring up apply now. And if we clicked on that URL, it would take us to the government's application forms. This particular grant's in a two-stage application process, so it does take a bit of time. We won't go there at this stage. We'll just close that down. And if we now look here, we see we've only got 15 grants potentially eligible, because in potentially eligible, we've got the accelerating commercialisation. we'll just go through and pick another one. We'll pick this business growth grant. Here's the summary of what that grant's about. It's talking about the turnovers of 1,500,750,000 in Northern Australia. It's giving some idea of the headings that could be made available. The funding is up to $20,000. The apprenticeship toolkit. Would you like to read a paper on the business growth grant? And this is how the system should have worked on the previous one. We just had a glitch there, which I'll work out later. The Business Growth Grant Program, here's the paper which explains to you how it works. You could print this to give to your client if you wished. So for every one of the grants, and there's hundreds in our system, there is a paper to give you some more knowledge as to what the grant's about. You can hand this to your client if you wished. And then we go to the additional criteria. Does the business operate in the infrastructure-related construction industries and provide or have the skills to undertake this sort of work? And we say yes. Is the business solvent, able to pay its debts? We say yes. Has the business been operating under an appropriate structure, company or similar ownership for at least 3 years? So that the business could have been a sole trader, then it could have been a partnership, and now it's a company, as long as there's a continuation of that structure, that business is eligible to apply. It's a bit different to the predecessor to this program, which was called Enterprise Connect. The business had to be operating as a company for 3 years. That doesn't apply for this one. Has the applicant ever received a business growth grant or a tailored advisory service grant under the Enterprise Connect program? Now, they haven't, so we've got to answer no. If we'd answer yes, we would not have been shown that the applicant was eligible. We can, again, click on and get the URL. We'll go to close. And if we go to the top now, we've now only got 14 grants because in potentially eligible, we have 2. Now, that's as far as I'm going to go on that process. Obviously, each grant that you think that the client might be interested in, you would go into and answer the questions, and the system would then place those grants into the potentially eligible grant. We can then produce a grant report, which is in the name of the client, New Enterprises Proprietary Limited. Prepared by would be your name, the subscriber's name, and it's dated. And it says there's 2 potential grants, and it gives a executive summary, a précis, of what the grant's about. And you're then able to submit that to your client for a conversation. So our suggestion is that you would process each of your business clients every year to see what grants they are eligible for. The suggested, pardon me, timing of that is as you're completing the annual financial accounts to identify the grants, and so in a very proactive manner, you're then able to show them the grants that they might be eligible for. Then it's up to the client to decide what to do, of course. Do they want to go off and do their own applications? Very few clients are inclined of doing that. Or they may decline, that they don't want anything to do with government grants, and some businesses do come to that conclusion because they don't like dealing with government departments. But the vast majority of your clients, if you presented them with this report, will want you then to lodge an application. So at that stage, our recommendation is you say to the client, this is a separate job. We're going to start a separate fee file, and we will bill you accordingly for the time that we work on the project. Bear in mind that some of the work that might be identified in this process you could undertake, especially if you are undertaking business advisory work within your firm. So there's the grant report, which you could submit to your clients. And I'm just going back to the beginning. So this is the page which you normally see when you go onto ESS BizGrants. There's an interesting testimonial from David Smith, the former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Australia and the managing director of Smith Inc. David believes that ESS BizGrants is a tool that should reside in every accountant's office. Few accountants are aware of the grants available to their clients. It's a minefield of federal, state and local special purpose grants that seem to change almost daily. So you could read David Smith's testimony if you like. You can start a free trial by going to the free trial area. The free trial period is 14 days. You need to insert your details so that the system will allocate a password and a username for you. And you can process one or two of your clients just to see how the system works. Then we would welcome you as a subscriber to ESS BizGrants. Our subscriptions, you can pay monthly if you wish, $43 per month plus GST for 12 months, or a yearly subscription paid in advance is only $450 plus GST. So for $495, you can be in a position to differentiate yourself in the marketplace a wee bit, to show your clients that you are being very proactive in the supply of these types of services. So we would welcome you all as subscribers. So I'm just checking again to see if there's any questions. I don't seem to have any. If you think of any questions later on, you can please contact me by sending an email to peter@essbiztools.com.au and we'll get an answer back to you. We will be sending you a link to the recording of this webinar in the next couple of days, and we'll also forward to you the PowerPoint slides that I've used in this presentation. So thank you very much for your participation in this webinar today, and I look forward to hearing from you. And well, I'd like to take this opportunity of wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a very successful 2016. Thank you. Goodbye.